All right. All right, we should be live, and hopefully, we have at least a few people showing up on a random Monday night unplanned live stream. But today, we are going to be talking a little bit about the Clash of Kings prologue, as the title says, and then just chatting whatever A Song of Ice and Fire stuff you guys want to ask about. See, we got a few people there. If you want to let me know how everything sounds audio wise or anything like that, if there are any issues, definitely let me know. But yeah, so basically, let's get rolling here. What we got, the first thing that I want to talk about. Hello there, Pyramidian in chat. Hey, how do I sound? Now that we got some people in chat, just let me know. But the first thing that I want to talk about here is, of course, none other than Patchface. We can't talk about the Clash of Kings prologue without talking a little bit about Patchface. So, basically, I noticed a weird interaction that Patchface has. Okay, hello there, Metal Clips. Good evening to you as well. Glad to know I sound all right. Okay, perfect. So it's always a little bit nerve-wracking when I first start the random unplanned live streams. I don't know if anyone's going to show up, and then if no one shows up right away, I don't know if I have everything working right. So thank you all very much. But yeah, we won't take too long here to get into it. I will let a few people roll on in. But this is the weird interaction that I want to kind of talk about here as we start things off, right? And there's actually, if you notice, two different quotes here. One from the Clash of Kings prologue and one from Dance with Dragons Brand 3. And I kind of want to just point out how these two quotes interact here. Because down at the bottom there, you'll see in Brand 3, when he's warging into a raven, he feels that there's a child of the forest in the raven with him. And he thinks that's weird, and he gets back to Bloodraven, and he's like, hey, when I was in that bird, someone else was in there. And he's just like, oh, don't worry about that. That was just one of the singers who was long dead was in the bird. She was just a shadow on the soul. And Bran asks, do all birds have singers in them? And Bloodraven says that all of them do. So, that's a little bit interesting, obviously. Like, anytime you see a raven, there's apparently a child of the forest in there. But the other weird thing is when this white raven gets to talking to Shireen, and he first, like, Patchface is first introduced when him and Shireen come to see this white raven, and the raven sees the lady Shireen, and it says, lady, and it bows his head, basically. It bobs its head up and down like it's bowing. And Shireen's obviously kind of impressed by this because it's a talking raven and it knows the word lady and it's bowing to her. And Cressen says that it's a clever bird. And Patchface says, clever bird, clever man, clever fool. Oh, clever fool. Now, if there is a man or a singer or someone in that bird, what I'm wondering here is if Patchface can know that. Like, does Patchface see that there is someone inside of this bird? Right? Because according to Bloodraven, all of the birds have at least singers in them. And if Patchface is looking at this bird, and like the first thing that we're introduced to Patchface is like, we don't know yet that he's got like creepy, weird magical powers, but we know now in hindsight that Patchface like sees things on a magical level. And we know now in hindsight that all these birds on a magical level have people living inside of them on some level, right? So hello there to everyone rolling into chat. Better Than Ray, Malia Sweat, April, Seven Horses, Cassius. Hello there, everybody. A shadow on the soul in Patchface 2. Well, I think Patchface, it's tough to say what exactly Patchface is, but I think it's definitely fair to say that Patchface is like living on like that plane of existence on some level, right? Like he has access to whatever plane magic exists on, right? Well, whatever you want to call it. And so, like, if anyone was going to look at a bird that has a green seer or a child of the forest warged into it at that point and know that there's someone in there, it's Patchface. And so it gets really particularly interesting because, like, the way that I see it, right? Green seers, like when Bran sees those old green seers down in the cave with Bloodraven, he sees them there, and basically they can just like open their eyes barely and look around the cave wall. But we know that mentally they can be out in birds. So it only really makes sense that if you're a green seer, you spend like 99% of your time out there in a bird somewhere just watching whatever's going on. So if George had in mind that the others, for those of you who follow my theories on the others and, agree that they're probably green seer shadow babies, if George knows that there are green seers who are the sources of these shadows that are the others, and one day we will know that, in hindsight, well, then this entire interaction's really kind of wild, potentially, because let's imagine that there's some old ancient green seer who cast shadows a long time ago and now just kind of floats around from raven to raven. If they're inside this raven and watching, whatever's going on here, and then Patchface looks at the bird, sees there's a green seer in there, potentially even knows, or even if he doesn't know, that this green seer is a source of some shadows or some others, well, he says, clever bird, clever man, clever, clever fool. Oh, clever, clever, clever fool. So basically he's like, oh, that's a clever bird, but actually it's a clever man. Like if he's pointing out there's a man in that raven and I am clever because I can see that, clever, clever fool. Then he starts singing about how the shadows come to dance, the shadows come to stay. Well, all of this scares the raven, right? Like the raven gets scared when Patchface says clever bird, clever man, clever, clever fool, and starts singing about the shadows, and the raven flies away. If there's a green seer who cast others in that raven, Patchface is like looking at one of the big bads and just being like, hey, I can see you in there. Now I'm going to sing a song about all the shadows that you cast. Like, in hindsight, as I said, if we go back and we can look at that, and we know that there are green seers who cast others, Patchface could literally be looking at the big bad right here in the prologue of Clash when we first meet him and singing him a song and scaring the crap out of him because the guy is in the raven and he's like, okay, first off, what is that thing and how does it see me? How does it know that there's someone in here? So that's the first thing that I kind of am curious about. And I'm going to put a poll here just for those of you who are joining us live. Does Patchface know there is, or does Patchface see someone in that raven? Yes, no. Oh, let's see. Yes, no. And no, because there's no one there. All right. So that should be showing up there in the poll for those of you who are here to vote on. But I'm curious, like, what you guys think, because I'm not like convinced that he's necessarily seeing like a green seer there. But based on what Bloodraven says in Dance with Dragons, there probably should be someone inside that bird. And so the bird gets scared by whatever Patchface sees, or whatever Patchface says scares the bird a little bit. So I don't know. To me, it kind of reads pretty cool to think that Patchface is like aware that there is some sort of bird or there's some sort of person in there. And that's what he means when he's saying clever bird, clever man. He's just like, that's not a bird, that's a man in there that's so clever. That's why he's bowing and saying lady, because he knows how to do that because he's a man. I think that's pretty cool. So yeah, that's the thing I'm curious to get some opinions on in chat. Like, yeah, Patchface is just insanely weird, right? Like, he's one of those things that it's tough to figure out, like, how the heck he works, you know? And by design, obviously, I think if we were able to figure it out too easily, he would be way less fun. And yeah, like, it's weird because yes, he does seem to get the visions like in song form, right? It's you almost get the sense that he doesn't necessarily know what he's even singing, but he is singing things that come true in ways that he probably can't even comprehend. So maybe he doesn't know that there's a man in the bird, but he sings about the man in the bird, and he sings about the shadows that may be being cast by, if not the man in that bird, other people who are in the same, hive mind or whatever the Weirwoods are, right? Um, but trying to think if there's a Godwin parallel of someone who dies in spirit, but the body lives on, and Patchface could be a candidate because his former self has been obliterated. That's interesting, actually, because yeah, when they talk about Patchface in the prologue, they talk about how he is like, there's not much left of him, right? He used to be able to do all of these really cool things and sing and be funny in all these different languages, and now he can't do any of that. Because he drowned and nobody knows how, but like 3 days later he washes up and is completely fine. So yeah, like Patchface is definitely a candidate for someone who is for the most part dead, and like his body is a husk that is being used by some god basically. But the poll for the few of you who are here late on an unplanned Monday night stream is pretty heavily favoring that people seem to think that Patchface can see someone inside that raven, and that's why he says clever bird, clever man, clever fool. And let's see here, hold on. Yeah, so does Patchface get his vision sort of like Jojen and Bran? Well, if he does, realistically, they could also just be coming from Bloodraven. I guess it really depends. It depends on where he ends up, right? Like it. You wouldn't necessarily think Melisandre's being directed by Bloodraven, but then she ends up at the wall with Jon Snow in a position that I don't know. Like it seems like, as I talked about in my last live stream about Jon Snow, whoever's guiding Jon Snow with Ghost and all these weird things that are happening, that they lead to the pink leather. They lead to Jon being stabbed, and if he's resurrected by Melisandre, it seems like whoever old Godsey is in the Raven and in Ghost is guiding Jon Snow directly to Melisandre. And right after he gets a letter from Ramsay Bolton in Dance with Dragons, he goes directly out because the Raven is screaming. Like he's sitting in his chambers reflecting on this letter where Ramsay's going to marry Arya, and the Raven starts screaming at him until he can't take it anymore, and he decides, okay, I'm going to leave, and I'm going to go for a walk. And when he opens the door to go outside, Ghost is there, even though Ghost hadn't been around for a while, and he's like, oh, when did you get back? And then they both go out into the snow, and he even thinks, like, where am I going? What am I doing? And that's when Melisandre starts, like, seducing him and pitching a shadow or whatever. So that's pretty clearly the Raven and Ghost who are guiding Jon. Like, they guide him to the White, and so he can save Mormont. Well, they guide him directly into the arms of Melisandre. So, like, I don't know. Maybe it is the Weirwood Hivemind or Bloodraven who's kind of sending a lot of this stuff. That tracks to me, but I don't know. Patchface could be some other envoy to some other power. But let's see. Yeah, that Patchface is definitely seemingly similar to Hodor, right? Like their mental capacity has both been diminished, but it seems like in different ways. But like, yeah, they're definitely like the closest to Patchface is probably got to be Hodor. But hello there, Geo Ninja. Hello. Well, you can vote anyway if you have even a rough opinion, but that is, also may be good if you have no opinion, just you don't need to vote. That is fine too. But okay, so let's see. Yeah, that poll is fairly heavily in favor of that. So the next thing that the poll, for those of you watching back later, the poll is like 94% that Patchface sees someone in there. So the next thing that happens through the Clash prologue here that's interesting is obviously Cressen is going to try and off Melisandre with the poison. And she knows that this is going to happen. And like that becomes clear as the chapter goes on. You realize like, oh, she's seen this coming. And you can tell looking back in hindsight that Stannis knows it's coming too. She saw this coming. She told Stannis and probably Selyse, and they specifically don't wake Cressen up. And like even in the next, even in a Davos chapter later on in Clash, Stannis says certain things that like wouldn't make any sense if he didn't know what Cressen was going to do. He's like, when Davos brings up that Cressen died, Stannis is just like, well, I never wanted him at the feast anyway. I tried not to wake him, and he died. Like he stops himself from being like he pretty much implies that he knew, right? He knew that Cressen was going to do this, and he even says, "I will not have you kill yourself in my service." So, basically, Melisandre knew and was trying to stop Cressen from doing this. She even directly tells him right before she drinks the wine. Let's see, yeah, right here. She says, "It's not too late to spill the wine, Maester." And he says, no, like, and then she drinks it. She's like, "As you will," and then she drinks it. So it's like, if you're going up to someone to poison them, and she's just like, "Hey, I have it, but like, it's not too late. I could spill it." And you're like, no. And then she's just like, "All right, here you go." It's like, your plan isn't going very well. And so obviously she drinks the poison, hands it back to him, and he could just clearly like not drink it. That's the other funny thing is like, she drank hers already. He could not drink it, but he drinks it anyway. Because he's trying to keep up the act that is clearly not fooling literally anyone. So he drinks it and dies. And that is how it ends. But what's interesting, right? So Stannis is trying to stop this. Melisandre is trying to stop this. Selyse might even be mocking him, trying to stop this. And Patchface, who, again, we were talking about, seemingly has some amount of future sight. Freaking Patchface knocks Cressen over and almost injures his hip. Like, is Patchface also on his weird Patchface wavelength trying to stop Cressen from doing what he's doing? That's the other question I have, right? So that's going to be the next thing that I'm going to ask here. We're going to end the first poll at 89% think that Patchface can see someone in the Raven when he says "clever bird, clever man, clever fool," and 11% say no, but there is someone in the Raven. Which maybe we'll run these polls again at some other point in the future, or like let me know if you're watching this back later on down in the comments. But the next poll that I want to ask here is Patchface also trying to stop Cressen? When he clatters into him and like knocks him over, is that Patchface's like weird, foolish Patchface way of trying to stop Cressen from offing himself in a plan that he knows is going to fail, Melisandre knows is going to fail, Stannis knows is going to fail, and they're all telling him subtly to be like, "Hey bro, don't go through with this," and he just does it anyway. Because to me, like when I read this, where exactly is it here? Patchface hopped from one leg to the other. Patchface lurched into Cressen, knocking his cane out from under him. They went crashing down together amidst the rushes in a tangle of arms and legs, while a sudden gale of laughter went up around them. No doubt it was a comical sight. And then Melisandre later on also says, "a clever fool and a foolish wise man." So like Melisandre, when Patchface tackles Cressen, Melisandre refers to him as a clever fool and Cressen as a foolish wise man, which kind of, again, implies to me like maybe Melisandre even knew like Patchface was trying to stop this, just like she's trying to stop this, just like Stannis is trying to stop this. And Cressen's the only one who's like, A, not getting the hints, B, somehow avoiding injury when Patchface takes out his cane, and then like C, he's just like fully choosing to drink the wine at the end anyway, even though he could have just dumped it out and I don't know, like ran. I mean, I don't know. He would have probably been punished, but it's like apparently not really, right? Because he was doing it. They knew he was doing it. So like, what are they gonna do? Like, we watched you knowing you were gonna try to do this. We let you try to do it. Now you tried to do it. What are they gonna do? Like execute him? I don't know. Maybe. But hey there, Jackie. Good to see you. Good to see you in chat. What motivation does Patchface have to prevent Cressen's death? Literally the same as everybody else. He's just being nice to Cressen. Like, all these people kind of like Cressen and don't want him to die. But Cressen is, like, even Melisandre, right? We get, everyone, like, thinks Melisandre is this, like, scheming evil woman, in part because of this prologue, and because we're introduced to her through Cressen's POV, who hates her, right? But Davos also hates her and wants to kill her at various times in his POV. And when we get inside of her POV, she saves his son's life for no other reason than, like, she's just like, oh, it seems like a good thing to do. I feel bad that his other sons died. I'm just going to save his son. So I think because what other motivation does she have to tell Stannis, hey, like, Cressen is going to try kill me and we should stop him? Like, what motivation does she have to be like, it's not too late to pour out the wine, Maester? Because she's not going to die. She's protected. So all she's trying to do is, stop Cressen from dying, probably because she's just trying to be nice, right? Like, it helps her. It helps prove her power when Cressen drops dead and she's completely fine from the poison. If she wanted to, have the benefit of showing her power off to everyone, letting Cressen do what he did was probably a good thing, and she still tries to stop him. So Melisandre is weirdly a kind of nice person. And I would think Patchface, deep down, on whatever level he could have motivation in his current state, I think he would want to save Cressen if he could. Cressen could have offed Patchface and chose not to. And he wonders if Patchface is, ever grateful about that. So maybe he is, Maybe Patchface is just like, yeah, I don't want this old guy to die. He's kind of nice. Yes, Melisandre is scared of Patchface. That is another really cool part of this interaction between these two. And I think we'll probably have to wait for Winds of Winter to figure out for sure why Melisandre is scared of Patchface. But like everything that I could imagine that Patchface could do in the next book that would pay off Melisandre being scared of him, that they're all really awesome, right? Like anything Patchface does to earn all of the skulls surrounding him in Melisandre's fiery visions has got to be pretty cool. Let's see, how's the poll doing here? So we got 75% currently saying yes, they think Patchface might be trying to stop Cressen, which I also do tend to agree. Like, I don't think it's anything we're gonna ever get confirmation on, but like, it tracks pretty well to me that Patchface would probably want to do that. Yeah, it was Cressen who helped Patchface when he was washed up. Patchface might be, doing his best to ruin Cressen's plan so that Cressen doesn't die. Okay. So, and those are the main things that I wanted to chat about in the Clash prologue, right? Is the Patchface saying clever bird, clever man, clever fool? Like, do we need to relook at that in the context of Bloodraven saying all birds have singers in them? Because I think those two passages coming together are pretty crazy. Ooh, that's an interesting idea. If Patchface can see through Mel's glamour, which if Patchface can see a green seer inside of a raven, him being able to see through Mel's glamour, it does actually track pretty well. I could see our boy Patches here, just like, what if he looks at Mel? Yeah, like that is a really interesting thing, and it does make sense, especially if he sees the green seer and says clever bird, clever man, because yeah. Oh man, I hadn't thought about that at all, but like that's really cool that like Mel might even on some level know like Patchface looks at her differently. Um yeah, wargs can see other wargs while warging. And it also kind of fits with what we saw in House of the Dragon, where Helena can see Damon on some level once he's like tapped into the Weirwood magical network, right? Even though like the magic might be slightly different on that in that case, but they can still see each other. So like, yeah, it would make a lot of sense that Patchface can basically see through Melisandre on a similar level, to the way that I think he might see through this Raven. So yeah, that like this is why I wanted to do this live, because it was kind of a small topic for a video to be like, is Patchface looking at a green seer here? But like, it's an interesting thing that I wanted to talk about, and I was hoping you guys would have some good thoughts, and you did not disappoint. That's interesting. She does say she doesn't really fear for her physical body because she can foresee any threats to her, but she does see Patchface with skulls around him. So maybe he will end up being a threat to her one day down the road. So okay. What else do I have on my agenda? My rapidly barely planned live stream agenda. Oh yeah. Since we're, just chatting about random cool little things, I also wanted to get your guys' opinion on another thing. We'll end this other poll at 78% think Patchface is trying to stop Cressen. Next poll that I wanted to ask you guys about is something that I talked about in the last video. As you read this passage here, with Melisandre seeing Jon as a man, then a wolf, then a man again, does Mel know Jon is going to die and come back? Yes or no? Because this is one that if you had asked me a while ago, I would have said definitely not. And yeah, this is a good point before we fully move on from Patchface. Yeah, if Mel does do anything with Shireen, that would definitely be the time that I think, yeah, Patchface, if he's going to be a threat to Mel or he's going to do something completely crazy that earns him the place in Mel's visions, I do agree it's probably when Shireen is under threat. But yes, so I as I said though, when I read this, I would have thought for a long time that Melisandre doesn't know that Jon is going to die and come back, purely because as a fandom, I think we generally think Melisandre is not very good at reading her visions, and we focus on the things that she gets wrong. And as I've done my most recent rereads, I'm kind of rethinking that position a lot. I kind of think that Melisandre might know exactly what all of this means. And she really does seem like she's expressly warning Jon about all of this. And when you see this, she says, okay, the skulls are death. She sees a vision of skulls. She establishes skulls mean death. Then she sees Jon Snow with skulls all around him, and enemies around him, and daggers in the dark, and she thinks he would not listen. Unbelievers never listen until it was too late. Then she's asked, what do you see? And she thinks skulls. 1,000 skulls and the bastard boy again, Jon Snow. Now, that's also interesting because it could be she sees skulls, and then she sees Jon Snow again, or it could be she sees skulls and Jon Snow again, right? Like she's seen him surrounded by skulls before, or is she seen him before and now she's seeing him surrounded by skulls, right? It's a little bit unclear. But I think either way you could read it as she sees Jon Snow surrounded by skulls after thinking about how unbelievers never listen until it was too late, and then the man, then a wolf, then a man again. Like, I don't know, man. It is possible she doesn't know what's going on. Um, but I, it would kick Winds of Winter into high gear much faster than people are expecting, I think. And I think it would almost be like a pretty crazy like twist to kick off the book if Melisandre was just fully prepared and ready for Jon Snow to die and for her to resurrect him. Because like dang, like she says, she spells it out so hard here that it would be almost weird. Like if she doesn't know that Jon is gonna die, go into Ghost and come back. It's a little bit weird, right? It's a little bit weird. Um, and yeah, it may be it might be this. It might just be that she, when he dies and goes into Ghost, she will be able to quickly figure it out based on her visions, and that could work too. But it is, and yeah, it could be that it clicks, right? But here's the other weird thing, right? Because I've been thinking a lot about the pink letter and how it basically causes the reaction in Jon that he needs to go talk to Melisandre, which we got some of this here. Okay, so here is what happens, right? This is right before he's about to read the pink letter out to everyone in the Shield Hall. Mel shows up in the paragraph or two right before he reads the letter out loud. He like makes a little mental note. Lady Melisandre had arrived. And then he reads out the letter that Ramsay had written. And then when they all freak out and they're bashing their shields and being like, yeah, 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 Mel has slipped out. And Bowen Marsh and them are all also leaving, but he notices that Mel and the Queen's men had left. And then when they go outside, one of the Queen's men is getting killed by a giant, and the giant has cuts on its belly. Now, if you want to say that Melisandre knows Jon Snow is going to die, the next question becomes, is she actively taking like actions to bring about that scenario where Jon is killed with her right there to resurrect him and then, you know, have him probably like her a little bit more? Like, because she leaves with the Queen's men. And by the time they get out in the yard, one of the Queen's men is like fighting a giant to the point where he is being killed and the giant has several cuts. I don't know if she could have like sent Sir Patrick into a frenzy or like, and here's the other thing is, even if Melisandre knows what's coming in the pink letter, because it's sort of implied that she does, Jon Snow asks her what happened to Selyse, or what happened to Stannis, what happened to Mance, what happened to the Spearwives, and where is Arya? And she says, all your questions will be answered. Look to the skies. Then later that chapter, the pink letter arrives, answers those 4 questions. And Jon Snow thinks, oh, Melisandre knew this was coming. But okay, so if Melisandre knows what's in the letter, fine. But if all the Queen's men don't know what's in the letter, did Sir Patrick freak out because he just found out Stannis is dead? Like, Jon Snow thinks about this, right? When he reacts and he notices that Melisandre and them have left, he thinks that he should have gone to Selyse first because she has a right to know that Stannis was dead. So, I could see a world where the Queen's men go outside and are freaking out because they just found out Stannis is dead. Like, that does make some sense. Why would they attack a giant because Stannis is dead? I don't know. So, like, I don't know. Like, I could see a world where it's all random coincidences, or like the giant happens to attack, but I could also see a world where Melisandre has somewhat seen this in her flames and is like, oh, okay, this is the moment, time for chaos to happen. And she, like, I don't know, uses one of her powders to make Sir Patrick go into a frenzy, or one go into a frenzy. I don't know, or she commands the Queen's men who are devotedly loyal to her to attack one for some reason, or like, yeah, I don't know. There's a bunch of weird, like, I really want to know how Melisandre reacted to that letter being read out loud, and what the hell happened between her slipping out as that letter is read and the people she is with fighting 1-1. Like, I don't know, man. Let's see. The poll is saying 43% currently saying that yes, Mel knows Jon is going to die and come back, and 57% saying no, she does not. Okay. So we are still mostly in favor of her not knowing, which, yeah, again, I'm on this one up in the air. If you would have asked me a year ago, I would have been like, what are you talking about? She probably doesn't know. But now I'm sitting here being like, yeah, maybe Mel is better at this than we thought. Some think Sir Patrick isn't dead because the body has the wrong clothes. It's possible. Either way, right? Like, if it is a fake Sir Patrick, in some way or another, that's almost even more of implying that Melisandre's pulling some goofy shenanigans, right? Like, if there is somehow a fake Sir Patrick being smashed apart by 1-1, I mean, I don't know how she would pull that off, but it's kind of even more weird, right? Than just actual Sir Patrick being pulled apart by 1-1. It's all very weird. Bowen Marsh and company leave, but they don't seem to be fighting against the giant necessarily. So it's not like they would have been like instigating this because they're angry. I don't know. Like, a lot of people who have very good reason to have strong reactions to that letter leave. And then we go outside and find one of them being ripped apart by a giant who has multiple wounds already. It's just a weird situation. It's a weird situation, man. So yeah, that's the thing that I wanted to talk about. From basically the last video, but let's see what's chatting about. Might have previously interpreted becoming a wolf, then a man again as needing to take on the role of a Stark. Possibly. But yeah, I don't know. It's weird to think what she would have interpreted man then a wolf then a man again as. Like, if she doesn't know about wargs and their second life or whatever, then she probably doesn't know what that means. But if she knows about that at all, like, it feels like she would know enough, right? The giant is an alcoholic. Yeah, okay. I mean, is 1-1 an alcoholic? I forgot about 1-1 drinking a ton. If that is part of it. Maybe. Yeah, and this is the other thing. Ghost was locked up. I don't remember if 1-1 is an alcoholic. If he is, that's very funny. But I must have slipped my mind, or like it must have been something that was slipped in and I missed it. If he's just drinking a bunch. But yeah, so Ghost gets locked up also right before Jon does the pink letter reading, because he's worried that Ghost is going to savage the boar of one of the wildling wargs who is probably going to be at the Shield Hall. So it's not influenced by Melisandre in any way or whatever, but Ghost is like safely away from all of this chaos as Jon Snow is killed. So that's probably good news in terms of like, okay, if Ghost had been at Jon's side, then he would have probably, tried to kill everyone who was killing Jon, and Ghost probably wouldn't have made it. So it's probably for the best that Ghost was locked away, even though it seems to have been kind of a coincidence that Jon ended up doing that. Hello there, April. Hello, Taco. Good to see everybody. for my unplanned late Monday night live stream. It is cool. I was curious, like, oh yeah, it's 10 p.m. on a Monday night when I started this. How many people are going to show up? And we got like 100 people here, so that's pretty cool. But yeah, let's see. And yeah, how much booze would it take to make a giant drunk? A lot. That's kind of why I'm like, how did I if 1-1 is drinking a lot, how did I miss that? Because like it seems like they would need to produce a lot of alcohol. I know 1-1 is very religious. I remember they're like praying in a grove when they find 1-1, right? Like they go to say their vows. There's just like a giant there with a bunch of people, and they're like, no, we're coming to pray. And he's like, oh, all right, cool. But okay. So speaking of giants drinking things, let's talk about Weirwood's drinking things. That's the other question that I want to ask on this little live stream here. I had another thought. And I had another thought based on a thing that this dude here says in Brand 3 Dance with Dragons. Sort of like in the beginning where the thing he says about all the birds having people or children in them repaints what Patchface says. So we have the whole blood sacrifice to the Weirwoods thing, right? Like, it seems it was for sure part of Northern culture, widespread up until a couple hundred years ago, at which point it became less widespread, but it's still practiced, like, you know, in a few places and in a few little ways, like Ned cleaning his blood, like his bloody blade in the roots of the Weirwood. But for the most part, the blood sacrifice to the Weirwoods has stopped. But this is a thing that goes like seemingly all the way back to the Children of the Forest. So it sort of seems like Weirwoods need blood. But when Bloodraven says what Weirwoods need later on in Dance with Dragons, he says, let's see. Yeah. Time is different for a tree than a man. Sun and soil and water, these are the things a Weirwood understands, not days and years and centuries. So, if Weirwoods understand sun and soil and water, that sounds like a normal tree, right? Like, if Weirwoods drink blood, would Bloodraven mention blood instead of sun and soil and water? Like, would he be like, oh yeah, Weirwood understands blood and soil and sun? Or, you know, like it could just be that George is like not thinking about it when he writes like, oh yeah, Weirwoods are a tree, so they understand sun and soil and water. But like it really feels like blood should be on that list if Weirwoods need blood sacrifice. So, and we're closing the last poll, by the way, at about 40. Oh, that's rapidly changing, actually. 46% yes. Mel knows John is going to die and come back. 54% no. We're going to end the poll there. The next poll I want to ask here is, do Weirwoods need blood sacrifice? Or only green seers? And hold on. We're going to do only Weirwoods, only green seers, both, or neither. So who needs the blood? When they sacrifice blood to the Weirwoods, is that blood sacrifice going to the green seers, who are strapped up to the roots of the Weirwoods, just being funneled there by the Weirwoods? Is it going to the Weirwoods themselves? Like, if there were no green seers attached to the roots of the Weirwood network, would there be any need for blood sacrifice? Or do both of them need it? Or do neither of them need it, right? Because it is very, like, it almost paints it in a different light, right? If these magical world trees that are, like, very important to the ways of the world and have, like, this godly power, if they require blood sacrifice, that's kind of dark. But if they don't, and the only reason they require blood sacrifice is because there are people strapped to their roots who are trying to stay alive forever, and who are trying to like give the people on the earth who are making the blood sacrifice like some way to communicate with this magical power and use it, right? If it is only the using of the Weirwood's magical power that makes them require blood sacrifice, well, that's very different, right? Because then you're just doing the blood sacrifice potentially to feed the green seers and keep them alive. Because I think that is really what the blood goes to, is to keep the green seers alive. But even when I had approached the story that way, I had also thought like Weirwoods probably also do run on blood sacrifice. But now I'm kind of thinking like maybe the Weirwoods don't even need the blood if there weren't people who are strapped up to it who need the blood. So like the children of the forest were doing this before the first men even arrived. They were strapping green seer children up to the roots and they were making sacrifices to the trees. So like this is older than people. But before they started doing that, I don't know if the Weirwoods would have needed blood. It does track pretty well to me that the thing that would need the blood is the people, because people need blood and trees need sun and soil and water, and that's what Bloodraven says. And especially if Bloodraven is trying to, as I've talked about in many of my videos, oversee the destruction of this Weirwood system and the death of the people down in the roots and the building of a new Weirwood system that is better. If they could run that one without blood sacrifice, as long as there are no people who are strapped to it, making themselves immortal, and then Bran, doesn't choose to make himself immortal, he rejects that power, then the next age can have no need for the blood sacrifice, so you don't need to be constantly killing people to keep the religion going, and that might be a better system. So I don't know. It's an interesting thought, right? And currently, we got about 26% on each of the only Weirwoods and only Green Seers. 43% say both, and 4% say neither. That's the early polling results here. But hey, Carl, good to see you, Carl Karsnark in chat. Let's see. This is fair enough, I suppose. It is. Well, it's not self-sacrifice, I guess. Yeah, it's. Is there a different word for if you sacrifice something else? Because you can sacrifice like people who don't volunteer, but that is murder. It's both, right? But yeah. I get what you're saying. I get the point that you're making, right? It's not a sacrifice to kill somebody else. It's a sacrifice to, to harm yourself in some way, right? That's sacrificing, unless it is someone, you care about, I suppose. But you probably shouldn't, sacrifice people you care about. That's not a good thing to do. Let's see. I did see someone mention, I'm looking for the comments now. Yeah, the red leaves. I'm looking for. I think someone mentioned the Weirwoods being green before. And like, yes, I do definitely think they used to be green. Here. They used to be green. I thought someone else had mentioned it too, but I'm not seeing it in the chat as I scroll through. But either way, right? I do think that the Weirwoods being green a long time ago would go really well with this. If the Weirwoods didn't require blood sacrifice themselves, but the Green Seers strapped up to them do, I mean, that could be then like over the course of this Weirwood network of these undying trees that live forever, if you have blood flowing through them for, 8,000 years or however long, 10,000 years, maybe that's why they turn bloody and bone colored rather than, looking like oak trees or whatever. I think that works really well. And that definitely seemingly gets stronger when you look at the 2024, I think it was, A Song of Ice and Fire calendar. where they have Rhaegar and Lyanna on the Isle of Faces, and it there's weirwoods with a bunch of green around them. And all of the leaves are green. There's no red leaves in sight, and the trees are not crying blood. And in every other calendar image we've ever gotten of a weirwood, it's been very prominent, like red and white. And this one is green and white. And yes, I definitely think that heart trees are a play on the heart pumping blood, because that seems to be what they do, is they pump all the blood sacrifice anywhere in Westeros that you make blood sacrifice to a weirwood. It goes to feed the green seers, who are like these gods of the old gods, right? The old gods seemingly either are the trees, or they are the people who are strapped to the trees, who are like in tune with the godly trees. So yeah, like I think the heart trees pump the blood sacrifice to the green seers. And I also think that there are heart trees in the wall that are pumping the water into the wall, also very much like a circulatory system with a heart. So yeah, I definitely think heart tree is a play on words in that way. But yeah. Yeah. I do get that reaction quite a bit. People are a little surprised by what I look like. I always find that funny. But so what do you guys want to? You guys have anything that I've talked about recently that you're really curious to chat about, or anything like that? Because I didn't have a ton of stuff planned here for tonight. I mostly wanted to talk about Patchface and Melisandre, and just being like, what is going on when Patchface sees this bird, man? Does Patchface know that there are people in the birds? Because I think the story gets very cool if Patchface knows there are people in the birds. Thank you, Jackie. Big mustache vibes from the start, but the hat is a surprise. Let's see. All right. We got 122 people here. Speaking of the cowboy hat, if you're catching one of my live streams on a random Monday night, maybe you'd be interested in a different YouTube channel that has no content currently, but will one day. May recognize someone there. So, if you want to, whether you're watching on replay or watching live, if you want to go subscribe there and stay tuned, things may happen. Little tease for things that may happen in the future. And even the little horse has a matching cowboy hat, as you can see. Same horse. This is the horse's YouTube channel, by the way. What happens in Cowboy Town? What happens in Cowboy Town is cowboy shenanigans. Clearly, that's the only thing that can go on in Cowboy Town. So, ooh, this is a good question. What would happen if you hooked Lady Stoneheart up to a tree? The interesting thing is, right, she is animated by some sort of magic that kind of makes it, like, not required that she be hooked up to a tree. She's animated by something that, like, it seems to me at the very least, if she's not killed by some sort of like magical means, she's probably gonna live forever. Because like how weird would it be if we get a later chapter and they're like, oh yeah, Lady Stoneheart starved to death. Lady Stoneheart drowned, died of sickness. Like, it feels like Lady Stoneheart's pretty darn immortal. And I actually talked about in the past how, like, I actually think if there is a mother figure for these shadows that were the original others, like the ones that are possibly from thousands of years ago, she could still be alive if she's animated by the same sort of power, and she could hate all of humanity in the way that Lady Stoneheart hates all of the Freys. And if Lady Stoneheart foreshadows how someone could go from a normal person into this hateful, immortal, magical mother figure who wants revenge on the entire world. That seems like a really cool thing for George to do, right? Is like the antagonist in the end might be this like godly looking, powerful, immortal sorceress, corpse queen type woman from the ancient past who cast a bunch of shadows with the Night's King, and now they have to deal with those shadows. But he's not gonna like just drop that on us and make us wonder like, how did she get like that? How did someone in this world end up like that? He's gonna walk us through it with Catelyn Stark in the first half of the book series, so that when we see her at the last half of the book series, we're like, oh, holy cow, she's like an icy 10,000-year-old Stoneheart who nobody ever killed. This is what would happen if Stoneheart was allowed to live for 10,000 years and master shadow baby magic, right? Like, to me, that seems like what the Corpse Queen might end up being if she is still alive in some crazy way. So, and again, much like Stoneheart, unless somebody killed her specifically, it feels like she would still be alive, even if she's frozen in the wall right now at the Night Fort, right? Even if her and the Night King are like strapped to the tree on opposite sides and they can like never actually reach each other, but they're always like within a tree's length away for 10,000 years. Like, it kind of works pretty well. And Mel is definitely the fiery version of the Corpse Queen, basically, right? Like, that is pretty much what, what's going on. When I used the image, I didn't load it into my little slideshow here, but I've used the image in the past of the little action figure that George had made, and he made a Melisandre action figure, and then he told them to make the exact same action figure but make her icy. And so we have a Corpse Queen looking action figure that looks a lot like Melisandre but icy. Yeah, it feels like Mel is basically like, she is, it is a combination of Melisandre and Lady Stoneheart that foreshadow what the Corpse Queen probably is. And yeah, basically, it could be the children of the forest that she wants revenge for. It could be, literally, it could be so direct a Stoneheart parallel that she was in love with the Night's King. He was a Stark who was trying to, essentially, I don't know if you would say, if you want to parallel it to Stoneheart, you would say he is a Stark who is at war with someone to the south of him, right? I don't know if we necessarily know what caused the Night's King war. It seems like there's a good chance he was doing some really bad othery shenanigans. Whereas, in Kat's case, Ned and Robb weren't really the aggressors. But point being, Stoneheart and Kat were married to a Stark who was defeated in battle. And now she is this, like, magically sustained, probably living forever, purely motivated by revenge corpse. And we have the Corpse Queen in the ancient past who may have been married to a Stark who was defeated in a war by some people to the south of him. And if he was, instead of killed, locked in the wall, like frozen into the wall, maybe she and him were both frozen into the wall, and that's what she wants revenge for. Maybe she wants to free her husband in the same way Catelyn and Robb marched south to free Ned Stark from prison. This Corpse Queen and her shadow children may be marching south to free her husband who's imprisoned in the wall, right? It would literally be the Corpse Queen and the others are doing what Catelyn and Robb were doing, like absolutely 100% directly. There is a Stark imprisoned who lost a war, and the son and the mother want revenge and they want to free him. It would be really cool, in my opinion, if that is the way that George goes with the Corpse Queen and like Stoneheart foreshadows it. I think it worked really well. Was the wall built before the others showed up? I would say no. Personally, I think the most likely timeline is Children of the Forest have Green Seers, have, Weirwoods, but they don't have others around. Then they start the first men show up, they start trying to cut down Weirwoods, big war happens, The First Men are winning the war, and so what it is claimed is done is apparently they turned the trees into warriors. The children of the forest and their green seers turned the trees into warriors, according to the tales that Asha Greyjoy heard. So I think what they did is they took their green seers and they started making shadow babies with them, and these icy weirwood colored shadow babies are the others. And that mirrors exactly what we're told by the HBO histories and lore when it's Bloodraven's voice as Max von Sydow, I think was his name. He's narrating and he says they needed to make a weapon that could turn men's numbers against them. And that seems to be what the others do by raising the dead. So the children of the forest create this weapon in that war. It brings the war to a stalemate, and I think then they realize, okay, like, we can't use this insane magical power, potentially because the last hero taps into that magical power. I think it makes sense that the last hero figured out how to do this, may have strapped himself up to the Weirwood, birthed some shadows for the side of humanity. Suddenly it's now a stalemate. They say, okay, we come together, we form the pact. They chase the shadows to the north, arm the Night's Watch with obsidian so that they can kill the shadows that cause any problems that are still out there. And then they build the wall. Bran the Builder being the last hero who figured out how to birth the others for the humans, therefore creating the pact makes sense to me, because then he's just right there to build the wall. Like that whole timeline works out when you assume Bran the Builder is the last hero. So last hero, Children of the Forest, probably both making others, or at the very least the children are, and somehow the last hero gets the stalemate and gets them to negotiate. Then they build the wall, and then there are others north of the wall potentially, and then shortly after this, when it's probably still fresh in everyone's mind of like what happened and how the others were created, the Night's King, who, I mean, could also just be Bran the Builder. I've talked about this in the past. It's also possible that Bran the Builder eventually takes the black and becomes the 13th Lord Commander. Not required for this theory, but like it's an interesting thing that kind of works timing-wise. But then the Night's King, whoever he is, probably a Stark of some sort, taps into this same magic again, probably using the big Weirwood at the Night Fort, and starts bringing back more others. So then they have a second other type issue with the Night's King post the wall being built. So I think the wall was built after the others showed up for the first time, and then others came back again after the wall was built. So yeah, I think roughly that's how the timeline went. But very, very much thank you to Marcus Wynn here for the super chat. What will happen when Lady Stoneheart and Melisandre meet? If Lady Stoneheart and Melisandre met, that would be very crazy. I don't think they're going to. There's actually a recent really good video by Wizard Kissing Company. If you enjoy the A Song of Ice and Fire chat, you'll probably like Wizard Kissing Company. I shared one of their videos once, but they put out another video recently that I had watched talking about Lady Stoneheart and made a good case, I think, for the theory that I most agree with as well, which is that there's a decent chance Stoneheart gets killed by Brienne, mirroring how Jaime had to kill the Mad King, and then he confessed his motivations for doing so to Brienne, and now she's going to be put in a position where she swore an oath to this person who's gone mad, and to save Jaime's life, she's going to need to kill that person. And I think there's a pretty good chance she does that. And so Lady Stoneheart and Melisandre probably won't meet. But I think there's a better chance Melisandre meets the Corpse Queen, who Lady Stoneheart foreshadows. And I think that could be a crazy meeting. Like, imagine the Corpse Queen is, like, as a punishment, been strapped to that tree at the Night Fort for 10,000 years. And Melisandre gets to the Night Fort and knows about the Black Gate, because Stannis was told about the Black Gate by Sam. Like, it's specifically mentioned, you will show me where this Black Gate is. So they explained it to Stannis at the very least, how to get to the Black Gate. And so if anyone is strapped up to that tree or strapped inside the wall at the Night Fort, I think Melisandre could meet them. And I think that would be really cool, because Melisandre is like the fiery immortal sorceress, and if the Night's Queen or this Corpse Queen is the icy immortal sorceress, like that would be a meeting that I would really look forward to, because like we would probably be in Melisandre's POV. So like I think it would almost be one of the best ways that George could like explain what's going on with one of these ancient magical people, is for us to like uncover them through Melisandre at the Night Fort, because like she's the one who's got the POV, and like the knowledge of all this magical shenanigans to actually like make sense of anything she's seeing, right? Um but okay, if Melisandre met Lady Stoneheart, I would imagine she would mostly just be curious. Like I think it would probably be similar to how she was with Beric in the show, right? It would probably be like a much darker version of that, because Beric was significantly more chill than Lady Stoneheart is at the moment. But yeah, like I would imagine her first point of business is figuring out, okay, what the heck is this thing? How is she alive? How did the kiss of life pass from Thoros to Beric to her? I think Melisandre, assuming Stoneheart isn't openly directly trying to kill Mel, which she probably wouldn't have reason to be, I assume Mel would instantly be questioning the Brotherhood without banners, like trying to learn everything that she possibly can. And Lady Stoneheart, I think, would mostly ignore Melisandre unless she thought that Melisandre was helpful for her in killing a bunch of Freys, right? Like, unless Stoneheart thinks that Melisandre can be used to burn Freys, she's probably just going to completely ignore her. So that's what I would think. Let's see. Oh yeah, there were there were a lot of comments on the recent Pink Letter videos about Mel not waiting for Jon to get back out of Ghost before trying to make a shadow baby. And I want you to know, I saw I saw one specifically where I opened up my YouTube Studio app on my phone while I'm at work, and I see someone talking about Mel getting it on with Ghost, and I click on it. It's a comment that's 3 seconds old when I open my app, and I click on it, and by the time I had clicked on it, YouTube had removed the whole comment. The whole comment was just gone. Like YouTube's auto censors have been like, nope, whatever was in the second half of that comment is gone. But some of you managed to get your shipping of Mel and Ghost through the YouTube auto censors, and yeah, I did. I almost mentioned that, like, because my most asked question on the first Pink Letter video was why target Ramsay instead of Roose. And my second most asked question was about Mel getting it on with Ghost. And I'm like, okay. But I think if that's a serious question, I think she will wait. Not that the person in chat here, but from the people on the previous video, like the people who are asking, like, what if she actually just doesn't wait for her, because she already seduced Ghost, which, to be fair to those people, she did. And it's like, I wish I could say 100% she's going to wait for Jon to get back into Jon, but I can only say that 95%. That's pretty much my opinion on the Mel and Ghost shipping. But I do really like the idea of Jon's shadow baby, because he has like Ghost spirit merged within him, right? That when she births the shadow baby of Jon, it would be kind of cool if it has like a wolf head, or if it's got like just a full-on wolf's body. Like, of the many forms that Jon Snow and Mel's shadow baby could take, being very wolfy is yeah. And yeah, so that is one of the abominations, right? I don't know if it's technically an abomination for Jon in his second life to lay with Mel, but it's an abomination on someone's part. I don't know who's. I don't know if it's a warging specific abomination, but it's an abomination of some type. But let's see. Oh, someone was asking, I did see a comment earlier. Someone was asking about, could you just stab Stoneheart or like someone said I don't think you could just stab Stoneheart, and that's an interesting question. I do kind of wonder, much like the others being killed by magical weapons, I do kind of wonder if because Brienne's sword is Valyrian steel, that will be the thing that allows her to kill Stoneheart. But yeah, it is entirely possible that like, and oh man, how dark would it be if like Brienne stabs Stoneheart, like makes this horrific decision that's like tearing her apart inside, and eventually she just stabs Stoneheart through the back, and like Stoneheart just turns around and looks at her and was like unaffected by this. Like if Jaime had stabbed the Mad King and he had just like shook it off and just blew up the city anyway. Could be some wild stuff like that, but no, I do think like the sword being Valyrian steel to me makes me think that she could probably kill Stoneheart, and so I think that is probably what will happen. Let's see. And someone asked, where is it here? Do we think Stannis will survive into a dream of spring? This is something that I've also recently been thinking about a little bit as I kind of try and get my head around what I think is going to happen with the whole North plotline. I think there's a pretty decent chance that Stannis' story in the show was streamlined because it would save them from having to bring the actors back longer and pay them more. And it just kind of makes sense if Stannis is going to die in the end, potentially doing things that they would have done if they had gone 10 seasons, but weren't going to do only going 8 seasons. Like, let's say in the books, Stannis either fails to take Winterfell and retreats to the Wall so he can burn Shireen, or takes Winterfell and then returns to the Night Fort for some other reason so he can burn Shireen, right? I could see the show either way, just being like, look, it's not relevant to the version of the end game that we're telling, and we don't, and this is D&D saying, like, we don't care about Stannis, so we're going to kill him off a season early. So therefore they could have rushed the burning of Shireen to be before the Battle of Winterfell. Whereas in the books, it seems pretty clear that she's not going to be burned before the Battle for Winterfell. So that makes me think that like she almost has to be burned in such a very different context that Stannis almost has to survive, at the very least, late into the Winds of Winter. I don't think it means he has to survive into a Dream of Spring, because like if things get rolling at a fast enough pace in Winds of Winter, I think he could get back to the Wall and do some circumstances could take place where he thinks he needs to burn Shireen. He does that, and I do think in general he will probably die shortly after that, much like we saw in the show. I kind of think he's going to get to the point where he burns Shireen, and much like in the show, he's going to recognize like, oh no, that was a disaster, and like Mel's going to have her crisis of faith potentially at that point too. I don't know. I don't know. I think he will live longer, and I fully agree that the burning of Shireen makes way more sense with the backdrop of the others' invasion. And I just straight up can't figure out how logistically Stannis could make the decision to burn Shireen before that. And yeah, I do really like that idea. I think I was the one who first pitched that because of Melina in Elden Ring. There is a girl who looks an awful lot like Shireen in the game Elden Ring, who you are kind of required to burn alive to destroy a big magical tree in order to get to a certain point in the game. Right down to the fact that she has half of her face marked with a gray mark, and she's called the Kindling Maiden. And if that ain't Shireen in Elden Ring form, I don't know what is. The Kindling Maiden with half of her face having a gray mark. So, it could just be me wanting it to mirror Elden Ring, and I fully admit that is the reason that I pitched that, is because I'm just like, oh well, Melisandre's probably going to want to burn that big tree at the Night Fort if she can. and it's probably going to take something magically powerful to destroy that big magical Weirwood tree. And Shireen is a source of big magical power, and if Mel thinks destroying that Weirwood tree is essential to destroying the others, then yeah, I think if she sacrifices Shireen to burn that tree, it makes sense to me. But yeah, that is let's see. So this is an interesting one, right? Is Winterfell's actual castle protected against shadows or just the crypts? Because when we see the hill that Bloodraven is in, it's a big tree town of the Children of the Forest. The Children of the Forest used to live in these tree towns, which were like big tree-covered hills, and they have caves and everything underneath. And it seems that the way it works is that the trees on the hill form the magical ward, because the entrance to the cave is between two weirwoods. Cold Hand says it's between the weirwoods and it's warded. And then Bran is warging into Hodor as Hodor crosses the barrier, and Bran is kicked out back into his own body. And that doesn't happen any other time. So it seems pretty clear that, yeah, going between these trees is what causes these magical wards. So that's another really good sign that the wall is a big line of weirwood trees, as I speculate that it probably is. And it's probably also how Storm's End has its magical whatever, if I had to guess, right? Like there's probably trees, at the very least tree roots, like still present underneath Storm's End, and Melisandre describes the spells as long forgotten but still in place. And so for Storm's End, it doesn't, even though the spells are long forgotten, it doesn't seem like it only protects the underground at Storm's End. It seems like it extends at the very least like upwards a little ways. So Melisandre has to get within the walls, within the magical barrier, before she can birth her thing at Storm's End, even though she's targeting someone who's above ground. So that makes me think the land Winterfell is on probably has some sort of magical protection, which is not convenient for my theory that Mel is trying to target Ramsay with a shadow baby. It means that either you have to assume the magic is broken by Winterfell itself being broken, or you have to draw Ramsay out of Winterfell, which I think is more likely. I think part of the plan is to hit Ramsay when he's not physically inside of the walls of Winterfell. But like in general, in terms of like these magically guarded castles, the other really interesting case is Harrenhal, which has weirwood beams in the walls, and as we saw in House of the Dragon, they depicted it with a bunch of weirwoods growing, bursting out of the walls, which sort of implies that the weirwoods inside the walls are still alive, or at the very least, like they can regrow and become alive, possibly because of all the blood that's also in the walls, right? So Harrenhal seems like it might also have the same magical ward system, or a version of the same magical ward system as Winterfell. And when Aegon the Conqueror came in and roasted Harrenhal, he specifically flew up on his dragon, like way up in the air, and flew so high that you couldn't see him, and then came down already inside the walls of Harrenhal and like spiraled down and burned everybody. So that also to me implies that the wards of these magical castles extend up in the air, but not forever. Now, I have thought in the past, what if it is like a multiple of the height of the wall in question? So therefore, like a dragon could fly over Harrenhal's walls by flying up, 100 times the height of Harrenhal's walls. Whereas because the wall itself is so big, maybe that's why the magic of the wall can't be flown over by a dragon, even if the dragon went way up in the air, because maybe you're off into space by that point and there's no air left. Like if it's a multiple of the height of the wall that is in question, like I could see that being how it works, but that's just complete speculation on my part. But yeah, the magic of the wall definitely does seem to go beyond the Weirwoods in the wall. Um, I don't know if it extends to the east and the west. I'd be kind of interested. But, like that's the one thing about the wall that doesn't make any sense to me is the gorge, right? Um, because like if there's ocean on either side, like okay, you can get a magical explanation um in that like some magical spirits and fairies and things like that are said to not be able to cross salt water, or like salt can repel them or whatever. So like maybe them not crossing oceans, whatever, but it's like dang, there's just a gorge like on the side that doesn't seem like that would stop magical monsters. um so yeah, I don't know, maybe it does extend in some way beyond the wall, but yeah, I don't know. That's the one part of the walls like world building that's always kind of really made me scratch my head as to like, does this even stop the others if they go over the gorge? Like there's a bridge there, but like I don't know. I don't know. Um let's see. Um so will Melisandre ever burn any Weirwoods? I imagine so. Like I imagine there's going to be a point later on that Weirwoods are going to be being burned, probably with Danny's dragons helping. Like I kind of think that um the dragon fire is going to probably be the thing that's capable of burning the Weirwoods. And then the other interesting thing about that theory we talked about a little bit ago, with Shireen being sacrificed to destroy a powerful magical Weirwood, is in Elden Ring, you need to take a magical flame. You need to take this kindling maiden who looks just like Shireen with her face half covered in gray, like a gray mark, and you burn her with the tree, with the magical flame, and that power combined is able to kill the powerful magical tree. So if you take Dragonfire and a sacrificial maiden of Shireen with King's Blood, that's like the direct A Song of Ice and Fire version of what you do in Elden Ring. But it's just you know, it, it's just using dragons and Shireen. And now Shireen in her first chapter is crying because she's having dreams where the dragons are coming to eat her. So like yeah, it seems like at some point some dragon fire might be being used to burn Weirwoods. And the other thing is when Drogon is in the House of the Undying, they see a door that has like a partially Weirwood frame, and he climbs up on the door frame and starts gnawing at the Weirwood. And to me, that's got some like Nidhogg, like serpent that shows up at the end time symbolism, who's like gnawing at the world tree. So like if Drogon shows up and burns the world tree and burns a bunch of Weirwoods, that seems like it would work. And if Melisandre is anywhere near Dany and Jon, right? If Jon is a darker version of Jon that we didn't get in the television show, and he's working hand in hand with Melisandre rather than banishing her, because again, they had nothing for Melisandre to do in the show, let's remember. She just literally left and came back in the most random freaking way, because she was supposed to be there for the final battle, but they took out all the parts about her birthing shadow babies with Jon Snow, so they had nothing for her to do. They sped up the burning of Shireen, as we speculated earlier. Like Stannis probably survives longer, probably burns Shireen after his stuff with the Boltons. So they sped up the burning of Shireen thing. They cut the shadow babies at the Night Fort thing that's probably coming with Mel. So they had nothing for her to do. So she wasn't around. She wasn't working with Jon when he met Dany. Like we didn't really get her reaction to much of that as far as I remember in the show. But like in the books, if Jon is working with Melisandre and then Dany shows up and they team up on any level, I think Melisandre might go on a Weirwood burning spree if she could pull it off and had access to Dragonfire. And yeah, she has burned Weirwoods already. I don't recall if we've seen her do it on screen. I know we see her burning gods that are like wooden statues of gods from Dragonstone. But yeah, I don't know. Yeah, so this depends, right? It the reason I could see Danny burning Weirwoods is if later on they figure out that the others are shadow babies of green seers connected to these Weirwoods, right? If part of what needs to happen the for the destruction or the defeat of the others appears to be burning these Weirwoods and the bodies that are attached to them, then I would imagine Danny and Mel go on their Weirwood burning spree, right? I think that's the context in which I could see Danny like actually focusing on burning Weirwoods. Um, but yeah, like she doesn't have attachment to them, but it's just like it's such a it's an out of left field for her. It's an out of left field thing for her to randomly do, though, right? Like it would be a little out of left field for her to just show up in Westeros and care about Weirwoods at all. But if Melisandre, by this point, from being at the Night Fort, and Jon Snow by this point have figured out, oh my god, like these others are shadows cast with Weirwood magic, and cast by these bodies that are sustained by these trees and strapped to these trees, then yeah, I do think that she might at that point start burning them. Yeah, Damon getting his Weirwoods at Harrenhal. I really enjoyed the whole Damon Harrenhal arc. It was great, and I'm tired of pretending it wasn't. Let's see. And yeah, I do agree. She needs motivation to burn the Weirwoods. If yeah, well, and then this very much depends on what Bloodraven wants, right? I think there's some chance that Bloodraven doesn't want to spend eternity strapped up to a tree being sustained by the blood sacrifice of other people forever. If he does want that, then I think it might be less likely that the Weirwoods get destroyed by the end of this story. If he does want to destroy the Weirwoods, though, then Danny may be helping him out, right? Like if he has recognized that, like, oh, all this power was cool when I had like a little bit more control over my body and a little bit more agency, but like at some point here now, I'm just going to be like a husk who can only hop around in the Raven hive mind forever. He might just want to die. And yeah, it's either Bloodraven is either, yeah, because this is the problem, right? Bloodraven has not done much to strengthen the Night's Watch, nor to stop the others. He could have stopped Craster from doing what he's doing. So essentially, the weird and what Jackie says here, basically, if the Weirwood system is viewed by Bloodraven as the thing that enslaves people and requires this blood sacrifice to the old ways, and also, holds the threat of the others over people so that they can never fully get rid of the old ways. Essentially, yeah, the only way to save people from the slavery of the Weirwoods is to burn them. And I think that is kind of the plan, right? I think Bloodraven's general plan, as best I can tell right now, is he's recognized like, oh, this is an evil system that I am a part of right now, and I am self-destructing it. I think he's setting Bran up to be the beginning of the new age after he self-destructs this one. So he may have guided Euron, who seemingly is hinted to be a former student of Bloodraven. He may have magically interfered to make sure Dany's dragons could be born, so that there is the magical fire that's even capable of burning the Weirwoods, right? Like he could be, because he seems to be influencing Jon, as I said, influencing Jon right into potentially the arms of Melisandre. So if Jon and Dany coming in and kind of destroying this old system and causing a bunch of damage is the thing that sets Bran up for him to swoop in. Like I was going to make a video about this, and I probably still will at some point, but it really feels like Varys and Illyrio's plan for Aegon, right? Like Viserys and Dany come in and cause a bunch of damage with the Dothraki. Everyone's so beaten down that when Aegon comes sweeping in, they accept him as king because he can fix all the problems. if Jon Snow is pushed to making shadow babies with Melisandre, and Dany is pushed to having these dragons and ruling in Meereen, where she loses her faith in her faith in humanity. I don't necessarily want to say her faith in humanity fully, but she is pushed to the point of embracing fire and blood right in time for her to get back to Westeros, at the exact same time that Jon Snow is being tempted by this shadowy magical power to take back the North, and Dany's going fire and blood on the South, and Jon is going all shadow magic on the North, and they sort of take it over, like we saw in the show, come together, and then it falls apart, and Bran swoops in. If that's Bloodraven's plan, and the destruction of the Weirwoods and the Old Ways is part of that, that kind of tracks. And it's very reminiscent of what Varys and Illyrio were trying to do on a non-magical level, of just chaos and destruction, and then their candidate swoops in at the perfect time for everyone to be ready to accept them. So that is a thing that I think could be what Bloodraven is doing. And this is interesting. Dany, if she takes King's Landing especially, and maybe there are glass candles at Dragonstone too, like that would make sense. If that'd be very interesting if Dany gets her hands on a glass candle. And I also don't I don't know if Bran would need a glass candle, or can Bran and Bloodraven just reach out to Dany on some level like Quaithe does? I don't know. Daenerys is interesting because her magic is awakened enough, right? Her magic is awakened enough that she can walk into a magical pyre and survive, and that Quaithe can show up to her and do two-way communication. So I don't know. It might be that she gets her hands on a glass candle, either from Dragonstone or King's Landing. And then that would be really cool if Bloodraven and her could have a two-way communication. They need blood, green seers, and tacos. Yes, they do. Well, I should check that poll again. Here, let's see, where's the poll of do Weirwoods need blood sacrifice or only green seers? Still bouncing around a little bit. 25% only Weirwoods, 14% only green seers, 53% both, and 8% neither. Okay. So looks like most people do seem to still think that the Weirwoods themselves do enjoy the blood sacrifice. Which is, I think that is what we're meant to believe, and that's what I would say is probably most likely. But I could definitely, as I said, I could see George pulling the little switcheroo on us, where it's we find out later, oh, the trees don't need the blood at all. It's just the creepy people who are strapped down in the roots of the trees who need the blood. They're if you get rid of them, you can stop blood sacrificing to these things, and they'll cycle the seasons just fine. They'll do whatever. You just can't take special magical power with them without the blood sacrifice. I don't know. That seems like it'd be an interesting statement for George to make, of oh, hey, the thing that is causing the death and the blood to be a part of the system is the fact that certain people want to be made really powerful by this system that controls everybody, and it basically enslaves everybody to this way of life. Feels like a little bit what George could be going for, but yeah, those are the main things I wanted to talk about. If anyone has any real pressing questions in here, because all I got left, this is the last slide I got for those of you who haven't seen it. Little bit of hinting at my horse's YouTube channel here. I'm helping him out with some projects. They'll be coming eventually. If you're only here for my Song of Ice and Fire takes, you probably won't care about this. But if I've ever said something that has made you chuckle, you might enjoy things that will one day be coming there. But let's see. I probably won't stream for too much longer since it is late on a Monday night. But as I said, if anyone's got any like real pressing last questions for some of the stuff we've talked about, I got 15 more minutes if you guys want to chat. I will end that poll there, but let's see. That's a good question, actually. That's a very good point. If Dragonfire can burn Weirwoods. Now, I think there's a Godswood at Harrenhal in the books. We know in the first book, Catelyn says that all the Weirwoods south of the neck were cut down, save for the Isle of Faces, but that is not true. Cat is wrong. That's a good point, Jackie. If Aegon respected the magic and chose not to burn the Weirwood, that's probably the best explanation in terms of like, it's either got to be that or the Weirwood is impervious to Dragonfire, which is interesting because I kind of think that Dragonfire might be the fire you need to burn Weirwoods. So having proof that it couldn't burn them would be interesting. But I do think this is oh yeah, you're right. Yep. Obviously, yeah, there is. So yes, there is a Weirwood there. I thought there was, but I was gonna look it up to just make sure. But you're right. So we do know there's a Weirwood there. How did it survive Aegon's burning? It either has to be that he specifically did not burn it, potentially on purpose, or it was that Weirwoods are impervious to Dragonfire, and that's something that I'll have to think about because, yeah, I think it's more like it would be more reasonable and logical to me that the Weirwood would be impervious to non-dragon fire, right? Like if you tried to burn a Weirwood with normal fire, that would give you problems. But then again, Melisandre seems to have burned Weirwood successfully in the past, based on the way she talks about burning Weirwoods at Winterfell. Like, I don't know if we have explicit confirmation that she's burned previous Weirwoods. But she talks about it as though it's possible, right? She talks about it as though like, oh, we can burn Weirwoods without Dragonfire. Oh yeah, okay, so okay, either way, the Andals burn Weirwoods too. Yeah. Andals burn Weirwoods without Dragonfire. Weirwoods are not fireproof to non-magical fires. So yeah, maybe you don't need Dragonfire to burn a Weirwood, although I do think that Weirwood that is the Black Gate at the Night Fort might be different than your average Weirwood based on its size and vocabulary compared to your average Weirwood. It's a little bit more talkative, which makes me think that maybe it's a special Weirwood, which is the Weirwood around which I think Shireen could be strapped and burned if she is indeed strapped to a Weirwood and burned, because she's probably going to be burned at the Night Fort. Yeah. Tarnished Archaeologist video about the Ascension ritual makes a solid argument that what was happening before Marika stole Grace was a wedding of corpses wrapped in a shroud. Any parallels in A Song of Ice and Fire? I haven't watched that video to know specifically what you're talking about. Yeah, I don't know. Honestly, that one, to figure out any parallels, I would probably have to actually go watch that video to see what Tarnished Archaeologist is talking about, which, if you guys want to, like, if you're A Song of Ice and Fire fans and you've watched all the A Song of Ice and Fire content, and you're jonesing for more, Tarnished Archaeologist covers Elden Ring, but Elden Ring and its lore was done by George R.R. Martin to a large extent, and I found Tarnished Archaeologist to be a really good channel when I was doing some of my deep dives on Elden Ring. But and I'm sorry. In terms of this question, it's been too long since I've been looking deeply into Elden Ring, and also I haven't watched that specific video. But like obviously, well, there is the Red Wedding with the corpse wedding, and I have speculated like potentially, and this is speculation coming in part from help from the comments, but like people talk about guest right, and like I've speculated that maybe part of the way you could deal with these ancient figures, if they are some sort of hive mind with the others, is if you could sit down with the corpses or corpse queen or someone who is strapped up at the night fort and feed them food. Maybe you bring them and the others under guest right, and that could be like a weird magical way to control them so that the shadows can't hurt you because you have fed the source of the shadows and therefore are granted guest right. So like there's definitely like George does have a bunch of people die at weddings. So like there are definitely George R.R. Martin vibes to that whole situation if there was indeed a wedding full of corpses. And like like if the corpse queen and Night's King got married, that would definitely be. And okay, so honestly, if we're talking about before America stole grace, which as far as I'm aware, that essentially means like before this current age of the magical order was established, right? So like maybe there is some parallel there in that like the corpse queen and the Night King, what they were doing is like some sort of like foundational thing in the establishing of this magical order. I don't know. It's an interesting thing. Oh, okay. In Elden Ring, there is a scene where a giant tree is being made out of the corpses of a giant army. Yeah, dude. Like Elden Ring just has so many things that are just like, that sounds so George R.R. Martin. It's just like George has just like pulled out all the stops and just like thrown all his shenanigans right at it. It's great. Like Elden Ring, like deep lore is some very George R.R. Martin-y shenanigans. But yeah. Let's see. And oh yeah. Furniture built with weirwoods, cut downs, all that survived too. Yeah, in Harrenhal, if there is any like weirwood still in there, in theory that did survive. Well, I guess Aegon may have also just focused his burning on the towers where Harren and his family were living, right? And then just like destroyed a little bit more for show, right? Like maybe because Harrenhal is obviously freaking gigantic, so like even riding on Balerion the Black Dread, you're probably not going to burn every inch of it. So maybe maybe that's why there's plenty of surviving Weirwood and a Godswood there. Let's see. Okay. In the trailer, it appears as though she reaches into two corpses wrapped in a burial shroud and pulls out the strands of gold. Okay. So that's interesting because, like, if she's taking corpses and, like, pulling out little bits of gold from them, that it could, and I don't know the context of this, but just hearing that out of context, it does sort of mirror the feeding off of dead people, right? Because Marika, for those of you who don't know, she's a lot like I've compared her to the Bran the Builder of Elden Ring, assuming you believe Bran the Builder could still be strapped to a weirwood tree, much like those husky bodies, like the bodies that can barely move their eyes down in Bloodraven's cave. Like he could still be alive in that form, because that's basically what Marika is she is like disappeared. People don't know where she is. When you find her, she is like barely alive, strapped to the world tree, and she is a godlike being for this age. And if she's pulling strands of gold out of corpses to use the gold or the magical power or whatever, that sounds like the same way that, you know, Bran the Builder is feeding off of dead people. Like if you kill someone and their energy goes into the Weirwood, he could be taking that bit of corpse energy, like the useful bit out of the corpses, and feeding off of it. So like that, you know, that is what I think of when this is first brought up. But as I said, I have not been on a deep Elden Ring dive lately. I don't know Elden Ring lore as well as I know A Song of Ice and Fire lore. So, hey Kirsty, good to see you in chat here. I've been going for a little while. I don't know how much longer I will be going, but hopefully you've got a good stream to catch up on. If you have any real quick questions you really want to ask me, as I said, you can get them in now. But no, we've mostly, just for those of you who got here later, if you want to go back and look at the beginning once I finish up, we talked a little bit about Patchface early on. And you know, I think we made some interesting progress on whether he can see the green seer inside of this bird when he says clever bird, clever man, clever fool. And then the bird gets scared of Patchface and flies away. And then we chat made some very good points that Melisandre is also scared of Patchface, and we wonder now, can Patchface see through Melisandre's glamour? Like that also is pretty interesting. But yeah, I think roughly that is where I'm going to call it here. But yeah, thank you guys all very much as well for tuning in. It is awesome that I can just randomly have an unannounced live stream on Monday nights, and 100+ of you will show up and hang out. And yeah, for those of you in the chat about the Elden Ring map, again, I wish I had more knowledge. Not ignoring that one. I don't really know. There are some good observations going on. I will say this: Westeros's map looks like a kneeling old woman, right? Like this is what I think you're talking about, right, Pyramidian? I wish I had the Westeros thing here. This is the last thing I'll say, and then I will get out of here. If you look at Westeros, the neck is a neck. If the Iron Islands were like gushing out of the neck, the top is the head. It's a big head with a big nose, and then it's like a kneeling old woman is what it kind of looks like to me. And I don't know what to do with that. I don't know if it's intentional, but it is there. And yeah, and that's the other thing, is it is also just sort of Ireland upside down, so it might be unintentional. But also George may have put Ireland upside down and been like, oh, hey, that looks kind of like a kneeling woman. I'm going to call this the neck. There you go. Like, it might not be any deeper than that. But it is there. And that and all of these many other things we have talked about are what I will leave you guys with to ponder here for the night. So thank you guys very much for hanging out with me. It has been fun. I'll be back for another live stream at some point soon. I'll try to announce it a little bit ahead of time, maybe a little bit earlier or a little bit more ahead of time than I did this time, with like 10 minutes. But thank you guys very much for watching. And yeah, I'll see you guys soon.